Dear guests, dear audience of Odessa International Film Festival, I'm very happy to be back to you today with the second panel of Cinema Backstage that is experiencing its first time ever online edition. And gladly, we've been starting in the morning and everything has been going well. So thank you very much for being there as our viewers and even posing some very interesting questions in the previous discussions. As before, if you will have questions now, please leave it on the comment bar under the interface where you're watching this talk. And thanks to the magic of the technology, they will end up with me on a later stage. But at this point, let me turn to the great guests and speakers who have joined me in this adventure, I would say. And let me greet each and every of you because the content of our talk today is quite peculiar, let's say. Hello, Maxim, Juliette, Eva, Christine, and Daphne. And thank you for your time that first of all, you're taking out of the very busy period that we are all experiencing. But you have also agreed to be on this adventure with us when you share something not necessarily related to the industry business models, to revisiting an distribution model against COVID-19, so on and so forth. But you will give us more of your personal experiences, and you have said yes to share what is a bit more of a human experience of the reality that we're facing. Be sure that Odessa Film Festival appreciates this very much. And I will now try to be the first one to tell the story of why we have decided to come up with this topic. And as I expect some of the feelings, impressions coming from your end, I'll try to be the first one to say that it's quite known to all of us that this year's been special, to be very mild on that. We've faced, let's say, even a common enemy. We've been fighting with an invisible, and at some point we, I think, entered an emergency phase that became almost chronic. If I recall the period of March 2020, I remember various tasks coming up on my table as a professional. I had to be fit and ready to cope with the conversion from offline to digital and offer all the professional tools that we had in a completely new environment of the online system to the creative people. I had to act as a very good mom and manage 2 young children to be able to cater for them, keep their mental health going on. I had to hear all of my friends and good colleagues who had different takes on what's been going on there. Some were in complete denial of the reality and did not want to accept it. Other creatives thought that was the fantastic way to get done and re-emerge in a way that can be more sustainable, more fulfilling on a human level. I've also heard a lot of conspiracy theories about the global pandemic and where it has been taking us. I've seen cinemas closing, I've seen productions not going on. And then at some point I asked myself, and this is when I also referred to the general manager of this festival, Julia Sienkiewicz. Shall we maybe dare and step aside from this constant delivery of duties that we put ourselves under and ask what is really the deeply human experience of embracing this new beginning? Do we have to be perfect around it, or do we need to fail to be able to re-emerge and to content life in a different way? Will the creation stop, or will it give us a better chance to create in a more sustainable way, to be more allowing and maybe more inclusive towards each other? And I felt that I wanted to create a talk where not only usual suspects of film industry representatives would come together, but also step out and invite a professional from the field of the psychology who could help us understand what are the coping mechanisms, what is the internal and external that we are going through. Did we have enough time to reflect? And if yes, are we actually in a only negative process, or is there something else that we are consciously or unconsciously developing and opening up for? Luckily, Julia was, as always, very open and progressive. She said, let's go for it. We can absolutely post it. And 5 of you are now today here to try to discuss this very human element of bringing mental stability and creativity together and understanding what does it really mean to reinvent ourselves in our own manners and probably not trying to copy paste what might not have been worked well in the previous years. And I will come to all of you one by one to involve you into the conversation somehow, but towards the end, it's meant to be a cozy and informal exchange. So feel free giving me a sign if you want to add more or if you want to reply to one of your other fellow speakers. And of course, the first one with whom I would like to start, who's been a partner in this crime a little bit, is Maxim Ilyashenko, who is of Ukrainian origin, who is having a background in arts management, and then he has, let's say, found his new other professional passion in psychology. He now works in the UK, and we are very, very thankful and very lucky to have you, Maxim, with us to help us navigate the process a little bit. May I ask you to help me to understand what are those coping mechanisms with anxiety that probably we all experienced, isolation, instability, and what is this internal element that we are going through?
Hello, Tamara. Hello, all speakers and audience. Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor for me as well to talk from my personal experience and maybe to share how I see that as well. Yes, and my background, as Tamara mentioned, I used to work for film industry, TV industry in the past, and 10 years ago I decided to become psychologist. But psychology used to be with me since lyceum and school years, so it wasn't something completely new. And if we talk about personal experience, maybe also I would like to share something what reminds me about actual situation of pandemic and isolation, all these limitations. I think it was 2008 when for the first time I came to silence meditation Vipassana retreat. Maybe you heard about that when you go to meditation camp for 10 days. And it's a complete silence. You can't use any books, computers, mobile phones. So you have just to commit yourself for total meditation and silence for 10 days. And it sounds maybe easy, but it was very difficult experience for me as well and for many other people, because like first few days, it sounds like fun, like good holidays, yes, when everything you can eat and like meditate and nothing to do and worry about. But from third, fourth day, it's a real struggle because you don't understand what's going on. And it's completely unusual for us as individuals being in this situation of lockdown, of all these limitations, of deprivation of friends, families, cultural environment. And I see that from my work with my clients as well. But what was useful about that experience, maybe for the first time in my life, I appreciated my inner world. So I understood and I became engaged with my inner creativity, imagery. You know, there's always a question from biology, is intellectual should be verbal? So does it exist only when it's linguistic? Because we have to express ourselves using words. But for me, for example, what is interesting, because when you keep silence for 3-4 days, I think from fourth day, I stopped thinking in words. I started thinking in images, and that was amazing. So I understood that I don't need words. And what was difficult, because I know that I'm not able to really explain my images, because it's so deep, like a metaphor or symbol, or like when a good movie. So you can talk endlessly about that, but you never get it till the end. Yes, so that's kind of richness that is present. So I understood that, to me, answer yes, intellect or deeper meaning doesn't need any words, so it could be present with images. But of course, we need words to maybe to talk about that. So what's going on now for me, that reminds me about that experience. And I see, for example, from clients, I see my family, my friends, that inner world is activated through dreams, daydreaming, fantasy as well. And another question, what to do with that? Because negative aspect of this isolation and meditation was, when it finished 10 days later, it was very painful to come back to the real life. So it was almost physically painful to go back to the Kiev, big city, presence, different people around. It took, like, for me, 2-3 days to adjust. And it's another aspect, yes, so this kind of self-isolation. So it's unusual. Our brain is social, we need others, but so we can find advantages of that, especially for creative industry, but also what the price to pay for that, yes? And so that's another question what Tamara asked about coping mechanism. And I think all of us already found that, because it's second stage, yes, it's not first time, so it's second wave now is starting. And so what we try to find out.
Maxim, I've been reading this book, which has been very popular in Japan and then translated almost in all languages. If Cats Disappeared from the World. And in one of those, in those dialogues, there is one line that stayed with me, and it is read as follows: fundamental law of universe. In order to gain something, you have to lose something. And I'm wondering if you agree to that, and if you somehow translate that into the year of 2020, when on an individual basis, despite our careers, despite our professions and standpoints, if we are going through this process of understanding what matters the most and what we could let go on an inner world, of course.
Yeah, it's a good question, yes, because also it reminds me, I think in kanji, yes, hieroglyphs from Japan, crisis means opportunities as well. Yes, it's the same expression, completely different meaning, yes, two opposite meanings. And from psychological point of view, yes, we know that we have to lose, sometimes to grieve what's going on. Yes, it's about age, it's about opportunities, it's about relationships. So it's only one way to get through that, it's to grieve. And that's when we can embrace consciously the loss, but and move on. Because if we feel stuck in the past and we don't let it go, it's very unhealthy from mental health situation or perspective situation as well, yes. And also it makes me think about 5 stages of grief or loss, of separation. Yes, when we say it's denial, anger, and bargain or grief. So it depends where we can go up and forwards with that, and depression. And after that, when we accept it. Yes, and also I'm wondering as human beings where we are now, because when pandemic started for many of us, first month was like a fun as well, at least from my experience, yes. So it was something like, how, even if I had more work, so I didn't stop because many people asked for help. And so it wasn't holidays for me personally, but for many people it was kind of perception. You can stay at home, you are more in control of your schedule, your life, yes. But after that, anger came, yes, because when we understood when we can't travel anymore, we're not free to go outside to see our friends or have our usual life. And that's a problem because it's, of course, I think it's another, and this ambivalence of that situation, because as societies, especially in the Western world, we are kind of addicted to different things, like to our work, success, traveling, all this kind of escape, but we allow ourselves to escape ourselves. And for me, maybe why the meaning of this pandemic, maybe to bring balance back to the world, because to recreate this balance with outer life and inner life. Yes, because of course, I think as human beings as well, and not only in Western world, look at any countries now, we are so absorbed by social media, TV, even very poor country, or I mean, it's people addicted to phones. They don't have money maybe for decent food, but they try to be connected to media or have a better screen and or new iPhone, etc., etc. So, and again, so it's something we're absorbed by outer reality. What about ourselves, like inner reality? Yes, maybe that's the higher meaning of that situation as well, to recalibrate, create new balance.
And I know that you are interfering, you have professional connections with quite a lot of people who represent creative professions, and you somehow also observed what was happening with their mindset and with their realities that were deconstructing at some point and maybe later reconstructed again. Is there anything specific you have observed in that world of creatives which you would like to share? Because normally we have this feeling that these people are very strong with imaginations, they speak in images, they produce images, and I wonder if you have an observation about the sector which is fragile as it is.
Yeah, it's not maybe very positive observation, because what I can see, it's a lot of pain and struggle, especially for musicians, yes, or like performing arts, because they don't have audience or access to the audience anymore. And many people, they think, should I change my profession completely, because what's the future about this? Yes, there's anxiety about the future. But there are less but very inspiring examples, yes, when other artists, they can see new media as new just way to express them, new challenge how they can express themselves. And on a larger scale, I think, especially for me, more arts became more accessible. Museums, virtual tour, movies, opera, that usually wasn't too popular, yes, to watch online or on screen. But now is it maybe it's again time to appreciate the cultural heritage we created, because there are so many movies, for example, that, I mean, there is not enough one life of someone watching every day good movie, yes. So now we created a lot, so maybe it's again, it's a bit of time to appreciate that. But I mean, it's still, it's painful, I think, rather. But as you said before, your previous question, yes, for this pain or loss, something can be born, and that's still we all have. And maybe it's a good question for our other guests, yes, and experts, because you know better what's going on, and so different stories,
Absolutely.
successful and not really.
Yes, and exactly, and that is when I want to maybe hear a voice of practitioners right now, and I would like to hear Eva Puszczyńska, who is a very well-known European producer from Poland, I would like to say, someone who's done a lot of great work. And let's open a little secret, Maxim. When we talked about this panel recently, you said, oh, I'm so happy that there is Eva who has produced Ida and the Cold War, because you somehow correlated to the content of that film and to those films and to what is happening right now. So maybe, Maxim, very briefly tell me, what is this link that you captured? And then I will converse with my dear Eva about her personal experience of this year.
Yeah, thank you, Tamara. Yes, because I think two of that films, one of my favorite films, and when we have this discussion, and Tamara mentioned that, and I said, yes, so it's also about that situation, because yes, about Soviet Union, all this deprivation, censorship, limitness, you can't travel at all, or either it's about being a nun or preparing yourself for that. It's for voluntary self-isolation as well. And we can learn a lot about that stories from different perspectives, yes, like totalitarian system or personal choice. And that's, it's resonated with me a lot, and I think it's interesting. So it's a kind of parallel to our conversation, our situation as well. But that's, I mean, my perspective is a...
Yeah, I just wanted to mention this because for me, these are the replics and the sentences when I understand how much additional value added cinema has, you know, when you really talk about the healing power of arts, and when an audience appreciates the content and correlates to the content with the symbolism. I think this is exactly what people like Eva would like to happen when they are producing films. So Eva, as someone who probably had a production in a go, or a film to premiere, or another film to enter the national distribution, what happens to the successful European producer suddenly when she understands that she needs to be in a lockdown and probably back then not so sure how future would look like? And I'll talk of Venice in my second question.
Mara, for inviting me to this panel, because I think it's, you know, talking to seeing you all and talking to people and sharing, you know, my experience with the audience. It's a great opportunity. Thank you very much. You know, starting from the very beginning, of course, first it was a great shock. You know, I just came from Berlin, where I was when I had a film in new competition of encounters. It was very successful with the audience and with the journalists, with the critics. And, you know, you come from Berlin and, you know, you think the things will be going as usual, because we were in very deep prepping for 2 big films which were supposed to happen this year, and one of a sudden you are, you know, blocked, stopped, and locked down. And it was like, you know, the feeling was, for me, it was like I was running fast as usual, and one of a sudden stumbled and fell right on my face. There was like a shock moment. You know, this is really lying on this face, trying to think, okay, how can I get up? And finally, when you get up, meaning that the first shock is gone, you think, okay, what is next? But I must say that I am a very lucky person because, you know, first of all, the film was premiered in Berlin, yes. The other film was in post-production, which we could do online. Of course, it's much, much longer. It takes longer time and it goes much slower, but still we could work. The 2 big productions, because they were international, there was a lot of international elements involved, you know, not only money from US, UK, Poland, but also cast and directors. So this was everything. It was in March. The decision was taken that we have to postpone everything for next year. So one of a sudden, the year, which was supposed to be very, very busy, was not very busy at all. So there was this void, you know, this is which now you start thinking, okay, what I'm going to fill the void with. But as saying that I'm very lucky, it's also, I wanted to mention that maybe you can see where I'm sitting. It's quite dark environment. It's my tiny, cozy country house, where since March, exactly March 11, I moved into the country, and I'm living here till now. Of course, you know, I was traveling to Wood, to the town I'm living, let's say once a week, twice a week. Also started recently going to Warsaw as well, like kind of, you know, autumn came and we are going slowly back to work. But for me, that was very interesting here. Very interesting from the personal point of view. This is what Maxim said. It was like a year of meditation. You know, I've never been for so long in one place since like 25 years. For last 25 years, my life was running, rushing. So now when you slow down, and when you stop flying, and from, you know, the height of the plane, you cannot see much. And now when you are on the ground, you can see much more. You can see much more. You can notice more things. And this is what I started to notice. I was observing, how nature is growing. In March, when there were no leaves in the trees, when it was, very cold, and day by day, I went through the whole cycle of nature, of life of nature. So it was early spring, then it was summer. Now I'm getting into autumn. I've never seen so many animals in my life, live animals, like wild boars, deers, foxes, all that, birds, all of that was close, and all of that was part of my life. So I am now still, living in the nature, with the nature, close with the nature, and I started to notice a lot of things which I could not notice because I was rushing before. And also the simple things when okay, there is a lot of food around you, in the bushes, in the trees, in the forest, herbs, in the meadows, a lot of things like that. So once of a sudden, I started also to do things I've never done in my life, mushrooms. I've been collecting mushrooms before, but not like every morning you go for a walk with your dog, not just to collect mushrooms. And this is at the same time, you just look around and you collect mushrooms. You take your dog for a long walk at the river and you go through the beautiful meadow and you collect herbs, like simple mint herb, for beautiful mint tea. And, and then you the alcohol beverages, because you collect fruit and you pour alcohol on it. And then hopefully during the winter time, you can have beautiful drink you made yourself. So all these things, once of a sudden, they became part of my life, which was really, really beautiful. And I'm very happy about it. But of course, there's another aspect, which Maxim mentioned. For me, it was not painful that I was not working. Painful was maybe the financial side of it, because when you make plans like 2-3 years plans ahead, you also make the financial plans. So where the money is coming from, what are you, how you plan to do, what you plan to do with your money. And one of a sudden, the money is not coming. The money stopped coming because you don't produce. So I'm lucky enough that I was invited to participate in various workshops like SOFA, for example, and others, which allow me to earn some money for, let's say, everyday living. So again, I'm very lucky. And also, this time, because I felt at some point that I was really burnt out. I mean, like mentally burnt out or emotionally burnt out, and also the burnout of the knowledge of books, of films. I had no time to read and watch conversations with clever people, which you can feed yourself with all the material you can share later when you work with creators. I'm not considering myself a creator, I'm just a film producer. But to be able to really come on the same platform, on the same ground with creators I work with, you need to have to give something, because it's always go both ways. Again, I'm very lucky because I work with the creators, which I can get a lot from, but I also feel I need to give them something, so this is really, so on the mental level, I'm not behind them. I can be the partner for discussions, and I can be the partner for creating. I as I said, I'm not creator, but I think that I'm good in finding people I want to work with and treat them as tools to, for my own creativity, inner creativity, to go out through them, through the works they do. So I think that is something which, of course, I needed the time to feed myself, which I perfectly use. I'm very happy. Also, something which I probably wouldn't do if not this time, the break. I turned into television, because I started. Okay, we don't know what is going to happen. There are so many discussions, so many words, so many things, and this is what is going to happen with the cinema. What is going to happen with theatrical releases? How are we going to build this new world? So I started to think about developing. I don't know if things happen or not, but I put my thoughts on developing 2 TV series. They are far away from people want to watch, mainly, the crime story. These are totally different things. But I think this is also a good exercise for me, mental exercise, to start new things. I've never worked, really as starting from idea, from thought and developing it to something. So this is something new for me. But here I wanted to also address what Maxim said, that we discover the new channels for our art. This is like the artists do the online concerts, we watch a lot of films online at homes, which is great on one hand. On the other hand, for me personally, it's scary because we are getting used more and more to be in social distance, which for me, it's not a good thing. This is for me, cinema, which I love. It's also the communal, experience. And when we watch I do watch a lot of films myself on, this is online now, but I enjoy it. At the same time, I said, well, I shouldn't be liking it. I should be again, because it shouldn't be just the main thing for cinema. We should be very careful about it. So yes, so this is really, and something what you mentioned about, our inner creativity, this is really which we start, thinking in pictures. We express ourselves in pictures, which is especially for cinema, which is great. And because it's also the way of communicate with people without using, words. Cinema, it's also visual. And this is also some which I think it's great for me as a cinema, lover and cinema maker, that this is really like, it became very, very clear. And also, for me, because for me, cinema is not only a story. I love good stories and people love good stories. But if you, bring cinema just to a story, it stops to be cinema. So this is really this visual part and the ability of, very personal development of thinking in visions, in visuals, in pictures. It can also be great experience for everyone. Also for those, it can be treated as an, cinema education, the way of how to educate the cinema, how to appreciate the cinema. Maybe I go too far, but these were my thoughts.
It's been fabulous because I think that you've said everything that is real, and there's so many things we could reflect to, and so many that I could share with you on slowing down, noticing things we were not able to notice around us, but also not to make things a bit too ideal. Also, somehow understanding that there are practices in our professional life which we miss a lot. And that's what you mentioned, having this communal experience of going to cinema with our friends, with our colleagues, and deep diving into the watching experience, which is offline. And it's not very surprising if this brings me to someone who is the head of cinema department at BOZAR in Brussels, a very important cultural place, not only for cinema, but many other art forms. And Juliette represents BOZAR that's been hit quite hard with COVID pandemic. And beyond the personal experiences, you had to deal a lot with structures, with models, keeping up the spirit of cinema, which you had to physically shut down for a while. And of course, eventually later on, opening up, but opening up not within the same context like it used to be. Juliette is also someone who is very much of a friend of the content coming of Eastern Partnership countries. In BOZAR, there's been a festival for 3 years now called Bridges, which always welcomes stories and filmmakers from Ukraine, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Moldova. And I think that within the context of border closing and border opening up in 2020, it's very important to hear how have you been coping, Juliette, and where do you think are the biggest milestones when we start to revisit the industry model of moviegoing? We don't hear Juliette, actually.
Now, can you hear me?
Now, yes. Sorry, you have to restart. Yeah.
I don't know exactly. I don't remember what I was saying, but of course, BOZAR has been struck, as all in the cultural institution, by the COVID crisis. The day before we closed down, I was in BOZAR. We were premiering the Monos, the Colombian film, and having a glass of wine after the screenings, we realized that we were about to close because the COVID was there. It was, I have to admit that the lockdown, the first part of the lockdown brought me lots of joy. I was home, I was not traveling. I realized that I was really tired, that I was working too much, that we were doing too much, that I was traveling too much. And I was with my family, with my daughters, with the boyfriends, the girlfriends, the men, and we were home. The weather was beautiful. And the first part was something very beautiful, but of course it brought a lot of stress regarding the work, because we had a full program between March and end of June. And we had to decide, are we canceling, are we postponing, and are we putting online? So it was a very joyful, stressful environment, but we had to adapt ourselves. We had to work on a different level. I realized that my team was there. Everybody wanted to find solution in order to stay alive, to bring a solution, to still propose cinema. And after, I think it brought a lot of anxiety, and this maybe it's the most interesting part, that I have underwent, that it brought me a lot of anxiety for the future. But of course, also I realized that the future was open, that we had to mourn something that we have lived, because I see what we are from different generation, but my generation, I've been working in cinema for 28 years. Yes, something like this. And this, I realized that we are consuming too much, we are programming too much. It doesn't mean that we have to work less in a way, but I think we have maybe to work better. There was also, for me, a big awareness of what is progress, that there's a misunderstanding of what is progress. We often think that we have to do more, that we have to, that there's something to do with growing of the production in general. At the end, I think it's really important to understand that progress can be linked to a better health, a better, a larger happiness, choices, because also I think we faced, and everyone face the fact that you have to see less people, so you have to choose who you really want to see, who you really, the people you care for, really. So I think it was, and I think for every one of you, a very personal and professional experience. At the end, I feel the future is quite open. It's a gift, because I think also that if the corona wouldn't have been there, we were going to the wall with the environmental crisis. And it was for me a hint that we have to change our way of consuming. We have to reinvent ourselves. And after the connection I will make to the fact that I'm working for a cultural and artistic center, is that I think culture and art are definitely important. We all consume, we read more, we've seen more movies than ever during the lockdown. We have consuming a lot of art. I think, Vladimir, you told about this. So I think programming, for instance, is very important. Curating is important. Because on Netflix, I'm not happy, actually. I'm not happy. And I've been on Netflix a lot of time, more than ever. I don't even, not sure that I've been to Netflix before the lockdown, really. But there I experienced what Netflix was. There I thought, oh yeah, but programming is really a job, is really to make a choice, to bring an experience, taste, political choices as well. I could speak about it during,
but I think, Juliette, you have mentioned something very important, which probably every speaker will agree to, and it's also very important for the creators in our sector. And these are the new ways of looking at the curation. And I think this is coming up very strongly, because in many manifestos, in many professional outlines, we have seen that programming, looking at things, maybe being more analytical or sometimes more daring, is something that the visionaries, the artistic selectors are looking out for. And that will eventually bring to the new ways of creation as well. Of course, we cannot cover this subject today, but certainly there's a lot to explore around it. And I'm sure that people like yourself, who are organizing the screenings, let's say, and people like Eva, who are supporting the production and making things happen, will be very important vehicles, if I may say, in this process of the new beginnings that is very often mentioned now as a term. I would like now to move to Daphne from Europa, who is a dear colleague and whom I've heard many, many times as a defender for the rights of people working on creative industries, someone very aware of various agendas that hit the sector. Daphne, could you briefly present the organization you represent? Because I think it's your first time first time online to be in Odessa Film Festival in Ukraine. But of course, this leads to an invitation to an offline edition, hopefully in 2021, for everyone who is on this panel. So tell us about your organization in brief, and then share what have you experienced in your as part of your duties happening this year.
Thank you, Tamara. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes. Hello. Hello, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be with you today, and hopefully next year physically around the table and surrounded by an audience. But thank you very much for inviting me to this discussion. It's really fascinating to hear how everyone experienced the situation, both personally and professionally. As Tamara said, I worked in the European office of Uni Global Union, which is an organization that represents millions of workers from across the world in the service sector. And I, in particular, am part of the Uni-May team. It's a division of the organization that represents staff, freelance, independent, and contract workers in the live performance, broadcasting, film, and TV production. So we bring together 100 unions and guilds from across the world, and we represent mostly the off-screen workers in the film and TV production industry. So we serve as a contact point for our members, the unions and guilds across the world. We are a clearinghouse for information for them. We share information that are relevant in the context of binational productions, multinational productions, the movement of workers, but also everything that regards the sharing of information, of good practices, and solidarity actions also across borders. And when the COVID-19 crisis hit us, of course, I think there was all the dimension of the isolation that we had to live suddenly, and the change of the way we work, and not traveling, and but there was also the importance of the collective that came up again, especially in a sector as it was mentioned before, where a lot of people suddenly were without resources, as Eva mentioned. Suddenly everything stops. We have so many people working on a project base, working freelance. Like there was this enormous uncertainty in front of many people working in the sector, and this, of course, added to the terrible anxiety that a global pandemic brought to us. So. Across the world, trade unions and guilds, of course, organize themselves depending of the national context, the national legislations, their means. But we could see how quickly the need of the collective came up, and how quickly also solidarity actions emerged. And that was really, it was very strong, and we felt it even behind our screens in isolation, all in our houses. So there was a mix of a lot of enthusiasm of what we could do together, and also a lot of course, pessimism of how will people survive the next months? How will they pay their rent? How will they, find ways to cater for their families? What will happen with the industries in the next month? So there was a lot of, the first weeks, of course, were really chaotic. But what we could see is that in many countries, as I said, a lot of initiatives emerged. And I just wanted to give you a few examples of what some of our affiliates did in different countries across the globe. Mostly, as I can say that I can summarize in 4 types of actions. The first one was to collect information, share information, because uncertainty is something that feeds our anxiety, of course. So I think it was very important for many professionals in the sector to understand and to have access to information about what was the state of play, who stopped working, what stopped working, what's the perspective, is there any support given from government, to whom does the support packages apply? Are freelancers, that are so many in our sector, also covered by those support packages? Then there were very concrete solidarity actions that came up, and I will give you some examples. And then a couple of months into the crisis, there was, of course, how will we return to work, and all the work around the safety protocols, and making sure that we can go back to work in a way that is safe as possible for everyone. So in the UK, for example, our affiliates, which is called BECTO, that represent the media, entertainment, and arts workers in the UK, they implemented all kinds of actions. So they were very instrumental in providing information to all types of workers, telling them which kind of support they can get from government. They also lobbied very hard to make sure that as many people working in the sector could be covered by support packages, including the freelancers, and they were very instrumental in lobbying the governments in that. Then they also organized a number of online training accessible for free for their members on returning to work after lockdown, on managing anxiety and well-being in the context of the COVID. So very concrete support. And they also reactivated a lot of the work they had been doing already before the crisis on mental health in the industry, because as you know, already before the crisis, the film and TV production industry is one that brings a great toll on people working long hours, a lot of anxiety, project-based work. So of course, the idea was to continue working on those dimensions, to continue helping people during the crisis and after the crisis. In the United States, IATSE, which is the unions, again, representing below the line, as they say in the US, workers in the film industry, they developed very concrete solidarity actions for the members. So they created, for example, what they call a buddy system, where members in need could sign up to have a volunteer check-in with them as often as they choose during the lockdown. So they were pairing younger professionals from the industry and elderly people that would be isolated, and gave them really concrete help in going grocery shopping for them or checking in on them to make sure they were fine. They also created a safe and free delivery system across their network of members. In Australia, the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance, they collected the stories of the professionals in the industry to understand what was the state of play, what did they need, what kind of support, so that they could then develop clear demands to the government and ask for a support to the creative industries that corresponded to the needs on the ground. And then in Brazil, as you know, where the country and the industry were struck so hardly by the crisis, since Cine, the union, in the first months, they had really to organize a food bank, actually, and they had to distribute food and hygiene products to professionals of the industry so that they could go through. And then after that, they started really the proper lobbying work and support, asking for support packages. So I think it's mixed feelings of we're still in the crisis, and in some countries the crisis is really hard on people in our sector, and the collective is so important. And the more positive dimension of it is that when together we can try and find solutions, sometimes short term, but at least that's a first step to get out of this crisis again, maybe in a more on another footing than how we entered it.
Daphne, thank you very much, because I think my biggest takeaway from your feedback is that you gave somehow the content and the substance to the world of the need towards the collective and the solidarity, because those words been out there for quite a while. To be completely honest, sometimes I thought, oh my God, it's even said too many times. How are we really? What's the definition? What's at the heart of it? And it's been especially difficult in the countries that are not yet that developed, let's say, that still deal with the geopolitical issues that, unfortunately, even in the region, we still have to talk about the ceasefire. We have our dear colleagues in Belarus who are fighting for the democracy. And while you are giving an overview of all those practical, sometimes sophisticated or sometimes less means of supporting those freelancers, those supporters, we also understand how fragile some other countries are, where all those people that might need have a food delivery are literally in the turmoil. And I think that is when solidarity has to have a meaning, and every action means something. So I think that would be very enlightening for for many professionals attending this talk and who will listen to it at a later stage, and we could learn a little bit how to make a professional support mechanisms work. And this leads me to Christine, a very dear colleague who is a facilitator and a supporter, and who will tell us more in a minute. But Christine, I've been seeing you a lot since March 2020 in your function as a fixer, if I may say, someone who steps in as a guru, be it a digital shift or any other process support mechanisms and schemes that you offer. You are out there for creative minds, but not only. You are there for platforms, for events, for festivals, and you are, in your professional manner, you are supporting the individuals, but also the organizations to drive through this uncertainty. And it has to do with creative elements, but it also has to do with managing the digital shift. And I think this together is very much on the heart of what's going on in this transmission that we all ended up with. Maybe some of us didn't want to, but we had to. So tell us, how are you navigating this, and maybe share some tips alongside your colleagues that could help our regional professionals carry on.
Well, thank you for having us, Tamara. It's an excellent idea to dedicate a panel on creativity and mental stability, and how to find companions on this winding path of 2020. Yeah, I have been thinking, after the German-speaking realm lockdown on 17 March, I've been thinking, what can I do for my communities? What can I do for the people programming the festivals, the curators, the filmmakers? And I offered a kind of virtual community every Wednesday morning for around 80 people. And what I heard from you, from all of you, that you got access to your inner sources, and this is what I also realized with my community, that actually people were at some stage happy to get out of this daily, as we call, hamster wheel in Germany. I don't know if it exists in the English, but you want to go out of your wheel and you want to go out of your daily routine, and you actually enjoy this kind of pit stop for a moment, for like 2-3 months, to think about what you really want from life. And we have been exchanging a lot, and I asked the community, what carries you through this time? How do you use this break for yourself? What surprises you? What do you have to let go? What kind of breakthroughs are you experiencing beyond this daily routine? And what is the creativity and the projects and the ideas that kind of bubble up and emerge once you have this time? And we spoke a lot and we exchanged a lot, and I had the impression that in the German-speaking territory we had a pretty well support system on various levels for creatives, which was kind of good for a few moments and a few months. And we had some further fundings also from the federal culture ministries for projects. And my community had, of course, to stop shooting. They had to stop their daily routines, but still they were kind of supported by the social system, which is kind of different than in many other countries. And I helped them on a meta level. Like I helped them with a variety of methods, like inner reflection, the theory U. I'm sure, Maxim, you know the theory U. The different questions that Otto Scharmer was giving on mindfulness, and what is actually my intention, who am I, who is myself, what wants to emerge, what is my real work, and what wants to be out there with the help, and what wants to be born. And on the other hand, I was helping several institutions to cope with the shift from the analog to the virtual realms, like in conferences, in congresses. I was facilitating virtual conferences and workshops and shifting them from one side to the other. So this is what I could do, and we wrote a lot. We issued many articles. This is why you have seen many of my things in the last months, I guess. And I was resonating with all of what you said, like nature, meditation, mindfulness, having time with the family, quality time. I never had so much time with my children in the previous 10 years, I guess. I never played so much table tennis. I never went out into nature as much as I did during this COVID, and I still do it. And I felt a lot of solidarity, and Daphne, what you just mentioned, and also Juliette, that the community and the solidarity in the community helped many people to support each other and to get a clearer mind on what they want to do in their life and what their sense of time is. I think the sense of time, what is actually our sense of time? This is also one question that we might discuss in the next 45 minutes. What is actually time?
Thank you very much, Christine. Indeed, time, how do we embrace it somehow, and where do we invest it? It's something probably that many of us have thought about already in a more daring way than before, because now we have time to reflect on it. And I would like to go back to Maxim now and ask you a question which we started to discuss informally in our exchanges. And that is about the content and the fact, a given fact internationally, that during those hard months, which is not yet over at all, what's been undoubtedly at the heart was the artistic and the cultural consumption. As we said, those people who create, you know, that we've learned from Daphne, from Christine, that in many countries we had a good support, in others they were literally left in the street as the freelancers without any support mechanism. Those are the people who created content that led us through these months of the lockdown. Some people were watching films, others were watching concerts, the third group's operas, so on and so forth. But the culture that manifests in different forms was really the food that we were consuming, and not just to make like high words around it, but to really place it in the most practical sense. And that leads me to the question, which is huge, but we could try to tackle it. Do you think that art really has that healing power that often is mentioned? And maybe we did not fully understand that until we really faced how much we needed to watch or hear that our sector is producing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yes, it's, as you said, it's a big question, and yeah, I have my idea about that. But maybe let me comment about time and what Christine mentioned as well, because now I'm watching. I'm not a consumer of Netflix, but recently somehow I found this series, German one, Dark, on Netflix, and it's very interesting, sophisticated story about different relationship with time. And what it's interesting that they said, one of character, we don't have time. Time has us. So that's just what you said. We have time. It's another way around. But yeah, it's just out of. But yeah, it's a good question. Yes, about does does it have healing potential, art, or not, or it's just form of entertainment or distraction? And there are 2 points, because also I'm interested, because I'm a Jungian psychotherapist, so I'm interested in mythology, anthropology, archetypes, so what is surrounded by creativity. That's why for me transition from creative industries into psychology was smooth, because I used to watch a lot of movies, and for me it just created bigger background understanding in my actual profession now. Yes, and there are 2 aspects of what I'm thinking about. First of all, there's a book, I'm sure that most of you heard or read that, his anthropologist and historian from Israel, Harari, Sapiens, Brief History of Humankind. Yes, kind of that. And what is interesting, what I got from his book, he says, for his idea or his interpretation, why we survived as Homo sapiens, because we know now there are many other human species back 1,000 and 100,000 years ago. And what is different was from graves, what anthropologists or archaeologists found. So even, as I remember well, 100 years ago, in Homo sapiens graves, they found symbolic objects like for underworld or life after death. And his idea is because the capacity to imagine and capacity of symbolic thinking made us stronger than other species. Even if we know from anthropology, maybe our bodies wasn't the strongest one, and our brain, etc. So the kind of predisposition of actual physical force and strength or power of imagination, as he says, or thinks, became crucial for survival us as human beings. So, and I think what represents arts, that capacity to imagine, this capacity of symbolic thinking, either in more entertaining or really like fine arts and art house movies, and this way, yes. And another thing, what second confirmation of this theory, because even all these objects of art or symbolic, like lion from German caves and such, or this inscription and drawings in France in caves. So we know how, so they invested a lot of time, ancient people, to create these arts back then. And they didn't have privilege like sometimes we have now because of social funding or like more resources, more money. So for them back then, 1,000 years ago, it was the matter of survival. You don't waste your time because you have to find food. So life was very, very tough. And if people, communities allowed this waste of time for creation something symbolic, days and days and months, that means it had the power for community. A survival, yes. So I mean that's what I think that art has this healing capacity. And even if we think about from when we have different criteria for mental health, what does it mean being good enough in your head? Yes, on psychological well-being, and there are few criteria, but both in different approaches, but all of them include symbolic thinking, so the capacity to imagine, and whatever we see around us, it's also someone imagine. All technologies, it came like insights, yes, and hard work as well, but it came through imagination. And second is what in England they say, in the UK, negative capability. So it's very specific English term that means the capacity to cope with unknown, with doubts, yes, negative capability. And so what now we struggle as human beings the most, because behind all anxiety and stress, that how we don't know what will happen, and because if we can't cope with that uncertainty, it's really difficult to survive or produce or every day like maintain daily well-being, yes, psychological well-being. So that's, and what we can is, again, as humans, to train ourselves, yes, to learn how to cope with uncertainty, because that's one of the key
points.
And
how do we face it, Maxim? This doing, or rather, let me rephrase it. to navigate in that uncertainty that I think we all understand is going to be out there for quite some while, do we need to face it and then find a way of embracing it, finding our way around it, and still carrying on with our life? Is that the process that we need to go through individually?
Yes, you're right, Tamara. I think that's a process. Yes, and it's a big discussion about what to do, because I think there's no one universal answer. We're all individually depends, because it's about attachment theory, about about security in our families, about our childhood. But what to do now? I think that, first of all, it's about our physiology. It's about our stress, fight, or flight response. And maybe you can believe me or not, but one of the easiest tool or exercise to help you with immediate stress or anxiety is breathing technique. Because sometimes we are looking for remedies, for long and expensive therapy, or something like shamans inside, ayahuasca, whatever, to get this strength. But that's a process we have to develop, because we have kind of this neuroplasticity. Yes, we can change our brain to certain levels. And I think breathing technique, like you can search online, that's a lot of them, but the simplest one, which I always suggest to my clients, for example, when you breathe in using your nose deep and hold your breath for 1 second, and breathe out using your mouth, but clench teeth, like doing like this nice and slow out breath. So that means that usually when we feel good, when we are relaxed, we breathe in that way. Our out breath is slower, and we can trick our brain or our body in a certain way. Whenever we feel anxious or uncertainty, we don't know what to do, we should first calm down our body, not deny our emotions. Or all emotions are important, yes, but so really as you said, that's a process, yes. And when we should relax or stop this fight or flight response from our bodies, because our bodies react in the same way like 1,000 years ago, but still now all bad news or stress, we survive behind screens. There's no one to fight or flight, yes, as before. So this simple one, but if you try that, you can see, and you can do that regularly a few times per day, 3-5 times only, that's already a lot. So it will not resolve everything, but at least let's create the grounds for calm your mind and just to explore and face your emotion, as you said, yes, and stay with that. So it's not maybe too creative, this kind of breathing exercise, but it's something physiological.
There's a lot of stereotyping on what is too creative. That is my vision and my view, personal. And we had a bit too much of self-centered industry, I think, and we thought we've been like very, very important. Maybe this is a good moment when we all think, just symbolically answering to you, that we do this breathing exercise collectively. Sometimes it could help us to really be in a group and a common exercise and understand a bit more about each other and not only try to prove the personal point. It also reassured me, Maxim, because in my personal experience of lockdown, the biggest urge I had was to carry on with my sport activities, which are very much linked to the Pilates and, the breathing techniques. And I thought I did not discover it after lockdown. I've been doing it for many, many years, but I needed it even more. So probably unconsciously, I was letting some of the negativity and the stress letting go through the exercising, which could also be a very human way of dealing with issues, and maybe not so highly intellectual, but really needed for a human being for the descent and then the revival. And this leads me to another element which I would like to still touch base is this is the future. And I don't want to go into the guruism right now and envisage a lot of future, but I would like to rather focus on Juliette and Eva, and first Juliette, who has opened up the cinema, the doors of the cinema in BOZAR recently. So it's not only online screenings that you are offering anymore, but you have been showing films within the halls. like normal cinema halls in BOZAR. And somehow it also happened that the Ukrainian Spring, which are the let's say cinema days showcasing the important films and showcasing the talent from Ukraine, also happened as one of the first physical events in BOZAR. I think this do correlate somehow the fact that our virtual world right now is linked to Ukraine. So maybe tell us briefly, Juliette, how has it been? Did you count like social distancing between the chairs? Was it 50%? Did you have actually people coming? Was there the will to watch films again?
There is no sound.
Stop, Juliette. I think they need to fix your sound again.
Yeah, I see. I refreshed. Did it work? Yeah, I think sometimes I need to refresh. But first of all, BOZAR closed 2 months only because we did reopen the exhibition mid-May. So meaning that we kept a communication with the audience in general, and we put lots of film online. And yes, but indeed, Tamara, we did reopen beginning of September, and we decided because of the COVID to reopen via open air screening during 10 days, proposing only European cinema and not easy films, but film from Croatia, Czechia, Spain, Belgium, UK. We didn't want to be easy, and we wanted that the people would come back with really the idea to see a film on a big screen together, even though with of course a social distanciation. And so it's all we opened, and it was a first step for us for an open air cinema. We didn't. It was our first time, and it was a success because of course the capacity were very limited. We could welcome between 50 and 60 people, but the people came. It was sold out, and it was fantastic because the weather was really with us. We had 10 wonderful sunny days, and it was a nice experience. And after we went back to our screening rooms, and we began with 3 evenings around Ukrainian films. And it worked. We were also sold out, but sold out, of course, with the third of the capacity of our screening room. But everybody was happy. The audience were happy to see a film with an introduction, with introduction by the filmmaker through Skype or through a small film that they would have made before. So yes, it's a strange feeling because indeed we are back on track, and we want to keep to our artistic lineup, so mainly presenting European cinema, which doesn't have the chance to have a distributor in Belgium. It works. The audience is there, but now you have to face the fact that you have an almost empty room. It's a third at the moment. We are not allowed to fill more than 30% of the room. And in October, we will be mainly only in our rooms, and we will have 18 screenings, mainly in the rooms. So we will see. It's really fingers crossed at the moment. But yes, the people are back.
I think that's also what Daphne mentioned all about all the security measures that cannot be overlooked, and this opening up is not something sensational, but rather a very cautious process that needs to carry on. In our industry, there's been a lot of coverage about the Venice Film Festival, and why. As many of our audience know, Venice was the very first film festival that, with the limited capacity, still ran offline. And many of our colleagues and talent who was there were exclaiming out of emotion. I've seen my colleagues emotional, but not to an extent of what I saw in the beginning of September, because everyone who managed to go was celebrating a cinema. And I could really feel it on screen, and I could really feel it from all the text messages or group chats that I've been part of. Eva was part of this experience as well, in her capacity as a co-producer of a very important film that premiered in Venice by Jasmila Spanic, a Bosnian filmmaker that some of you may know, a very important female talent in European cinema. I would say very daring talent that's done a lot of interesting films, and she premiered with a film Kivaido's Aida, I think, if I pronounce it well. Eva is a co-producer of that film, and maybe you could tell us, after a long process of actually making this project become a film, which I happen to know was not such a straightforward experience, what was it to finally launch it in Venice against all odds in 2020?
Of course, it was great feeling, but I have to probably disappoint all of you here. I did not go to Venice. I did not go to Venice. Yes, I did not go to Venice, but it was the experience of, watching my colleagues there and, getting all the messages and everything. It was really fantastic. And that after all these years of hard work, we could have the film in Venice and screen it in Venice. It was a huge success. But I want to say that at the very same time, I was always saying immodestly that I exchanged, Venice for Koszalin. Koszalin is a tiny place in Poland, up north Poland, where they have for like almost 30 years the festival for the first films of young Polish directors, of filmmakers. And I decided that I will choose this little tiny Koszalin instead of going to Venice for one of main reasons, just to show that this for our Polish community, for young filmmakers, this Koszalin is as important as Venice, because maybe they will start their long road to Venice there. And I wanted to also support, because it was the first festival in Poland which was done not online, and which happened. It was postponed because usually it's happening in June, but this year it has been postponed, but it happened live. And really being there, I wanted to say, okay, if we keep all the security measures, really, as you mentioned, Juliette, it just really like, the capacities of the cinema was really like only 50%. You could feel that this is kind of empty. All the, temperature measurements, all the disinfections everywhere, and, the disinfections of the cinema hall after its screening. And even I was there in the jury, even the jury meetings where we were keeping the 2 meters distance, and, first days we were even, having masks and so on. So but it was a great experience. For me this year, it was the first cinema experience, and this collective experience, which I so much enjoy. So I was with my heart, I was with Jasmila and with my colleagues. I was in Venice, but with my body, and I was in Koszalin, and sitting here now, I think it was a good decision, because I was only one of the co-producers, and most of all the others were there to support our beautiful and very talented, as Tamara said, director. But I was doing something for my community as well, which I think in those hard times, it's very, very important. And here, it's not easy. The community was not supported properly, and the cinemas are dying. So I thought it is important for me at this very moment to be there in this tiny place of Koszalin, that going to Venice. And but I'm very proud of the film, and I'm really proud that I am one of the co-producers of Quo Vadis Aida, because it's absolutely beautiful and very, very important film for our times.
Community feeling and supporting each other comes up like in every second line, and I'm really happy to hear that. So maybe as we are slowly going, we still have some 15 minutes that we can exchange. But I wanted to ask maybe Christine and then Daphne, are there like 2-3 tips, like 2-3 issues that you found the most practical and helpful in your work in this process of shifting from analog to virtual, as Christine said, that you would like to share with others, maybe even with younger people who are not so extrovert to start discussions digitally straight away and need a bit more time to find themselves in this online world. Are there any tips you would like to leave with our audience, either related to the general situation or specifically to the digital shift? So Christine, maybe I start with you.
Maybe they have to activate my audio. Can you hear me now?
Yes, now it's okay.
So what I said previously, I said community building first, decision making second. So if we concentrate and work on our relations first, we can come to better discussions and come to better solutions together. So this also counts in the virtual realm, that we first have to find a kind of access and energy, get to know each other before we exchange our ideas, projects, developments, solutions, finding solutions. So I think this also counts in the virtual area, which is important. And of course, there are many tips, but what I would say also after our EAVE and SOFA experiences, 4 hours for conference is maximum. People cannot cope with being in front of a Zoom or whatever a technique more than 4 hours. You have to have breaks, you have to have interactions every 5 minutes, otherwise with talking heads people fall asleep for a long time. I'm sure you have this experience, and you can use interaction energizers and games, community plays to get your attention back, and of course breaks. Have a lot of breaks. Daphne.
Daphne, I remember when we met after lockdown, and we were very happy to see each other in flesh in Brussels. You said there's been so much expected also from us when we were at home. On one hand, dealing with kids or other constructions of the partnerships, doing maybe some cooking, but also being available online all the time, and speeding up on our professional duties. Did you find your balance somehow in all this, and are you now back to the office, or are you still working from home? Anything you would like to share in that direction?
I'm back in the office, as you can say, but only can you hear me? Only a few days a week. And personally, I found it extremely important from time to time to come to the office, back to the collective, also here, and see people, even if it's with distance and not that many big meetings and encounters. I feel it extremely important. And also, what I miss most in my daily professional life is the serendipity, the things that happen that are not planned, because here we plan everything, and we can plan a lot more encounters that we didn't plan necessarily before, like this discussion. Like, it might not have happened in real life either. So I don't think it should replace the real life encounters when we'll be back to them, but clearly it opened up also new possibilities. But also everything that happens that is unplanned, it's only when you move, you get out of your house, when you meet people, when you cross people. And I think that's, like, for me, it's my personal lesson is, like, we have to keep what we learned and the opportunities it opened, but we have to go back to mixing up. And then another thing that I really hope will continue after all this experience, it's what Juliette said, like the wake up call that was this crisis about the environment, about our lives and the way we live our lives, is also that we will continue fighting for changes in the future. Like Tamara, we work a lot together on gender equality, the representation of women in the sector, on diversity. We also work a lot on working conditions and the importance of solidarity. And hopefully all those topics, they will keep going in our discussions and in the way we work, and we'll change things in order to also maybe be better prepared for the next crisis if it comes, and also to build an industry that it's even more solid and grounded and equal. And I hope, I know that it's grim, some perspectives are grim, but hopefully we will also learn, and we will progress at some levels.
Yes, indeed, and all those values and issues that you mentioned are very important, and not for the screen face talk only, but about the real action that needs to be taken. So I would like to share this hope that you've just explained, that it really goes into an action and not only the declarations of it. And Maxim, let me come back to you. You did tell us about the breathing exercise. You kind of helped us understand how important it is to know that let's say, not only film, but cultural heritage that we have created really played the role in the present times for us to consume it, to make some symbolic thinkings with the films, maybe with the music, to translate it into images. It's a very complex subject. I'm not gonna leave it just like here. We will try to go deeper into this topic in the next year as well. But I wonder if you could finally give some of your thoughts about the future, and whether it's imperative that the creation of content is not stopping. Because what happens if we've seen everything by now, and then when the second crisis in brackets comes, what are we going to consume then? Is it now very important to still stick to our work and go on with creation, maybe with a different mindset, maybe with more sustainable means, maybe with smaller groups, but not to stop the process of creation? Is that something you consider an important takeaway as well?
I mean, thank you, Tamara. Yes, and I think maybe it's a question rather for our experts, because I'm not futurologist or artist myself. But what is important, maybe it's sad or not very optimistic to say, but creativity, it's not just about doing something new, it's about destruction as well. And sometimes creativity or the world life itself recreate through destruction process. And that's kind of scary part of that, yes. But again, I mean, what is another aspect of this pandemic? I think it reminds us about we are mortal human beings, and of course we can have spiritual beliefs or not, but physically, as you said, it's important to exercise, of course, and to maintain our body healthy as much as we can. But that's again to face this reality. And someone mentioned as well ecological crisis, and I think that's a real problem, and it's still there, and it will define our future for our generation and next generation. So that's the biggest and more serious even problem, yes. And but creativity will stay, yes, either from human beings or nature, of others. And sometimes people ask me, what do you think about the myth of that time or story about that? And I know, for me, one of that archetypal quality of the time, we can say apocalypse as well, because, you know, from Greek, apocalypse doesn't mean the end of the world. It means uncovering, revealing. So when it's something revealed, and so what is revealing to ourselves for that crisis, our inner world, our fragility again, that we are human beings, not machines or perfect minds or narcissistic creatures that think the world turn around us. Yes, so it's pandemic, because it's about illness, yes, it's fragility. It reminds us about us. I mean, it's back to reality. And I mean, creativity and inner world could be part of response to that, to create your own story. So how do we respond? It creates meaning. So that's why I think it's important. It's not just be creative for the sake of creativity, yes, to find out your own meaning, what's going on. And it's always very personal. I don't think there's any universal answer to that. And it's the most difficult, just to stick with that.
But that's very important what you just said. And I've been seeing like Eva and Juliette been really, you know, with their eyes clinging to, because the people, as you said, you know, the practitioners who are in this in one way or another, as well as Daphne and Christine who embrace things from a different panel, to a certain extent myself as well, I think it's important for us to know that beyond the daily tasks that makes our profession, we are contributing to something that has a value added. You know, we those stories, if you like, or that content helped someone, of course on an individual basis, but helped to go through a difficult moment, or to make a parallel saying, you know, if they fail, I'll fail and I'll reinvent myself as well. So I'm not seeking for any universal answer here. And actually, I would be even very much against it. It's more about letting things happen. If it's a failure, let it fail. But if it also is a revival, let it come up in a good way somehow, with a strong spirit, because nothing is going to probably stop forever. But how we carry on, that makes a difference. And I strongly believe that we all individually contribute to that. Probably some of us, the lucky ones, can be aware of it, but not all of us are aware of these bigger processes every day that happen around us. Unless anyone from the speakers, would want to have like the last words or a comment, I think we've offered something quite peculiar to our audience. They need to digest it. They really need to embrace it. I can imagine that is a bit more complex and hopefully interesting to follow than a specific talk about a specific model in our industry. So I'm happy to slowly wrap this conversation, unless any of you, my dear guests, would like to have a final word. So just give me a sign with a hand, and if not, then I think it's, as Christine told us, and we all nodded to it, we have to have breaks, and we don't have to make it any longer if we feel like we shared what's been at the heart. I think I really believe a lot has been achieved in this conversation, and it has happened only thanks to you, because you showed your personal sides to us as well. Some of you guided us more into the framework, others we tried to be honest with ourselves, and we diverted a little bit from the fake social constructions that some of the people tried to only show their face perfect during the last 6 months. You know, everyone learned a new language, everyone discovered the new habits, and so on and so forth. I think it's okay if we had anxious days, if we felt unwell at some point, and if we are slowly coping and coming back and appreciating small things around us that maybe we failed seeing before, I dare thinking that this will replicate in our work as well. And many of us are part of the creative process. And as Maxim said, it's not going to be for the sake of creativity, but for also really making something more meaningful. Thank you very much again on behalf of the festival team that is now off screen, but everyone is watching. It's been our pleasure. And as said, fingers crossed, but I do hope I will see you all in 2020 on a beautiful seashore in Odessa in 2021. And it will be a continuation of this discussion with probably some good spirit to say chin chin. So thank you very much and have a good continuation of the evening. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.